hopefully some more people trickle in from the career fair. Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Silverman. I'm with the Urban Sustainability Program at City College, and I'm happy to welcome you to our now fourth Decarbonize CCNY Downtown Hall. This video that I have pulled up is from a current sustainability student, Yael Amron. She could not be here, but was very much part of the early organizing effort to decarbonize the campus, so I just wanted to give her the space to say hello.
To folks in this event, I'm Yael, a CCNY master's student in the Sustainability and Urban Environment program. I'm currently on maintenance and matriculation, taking care of my kids, but I wanted to say hello to all of you and give a quick history of how today's event came about. In 2023, along with my capstone group, I decided that I wanted to find out how CCNY was tackling decarbonization of its campus and buildings. Our group took it upon ourselves to interview professors, come up with projects like the waste audit, work with the facility staff to find out if a building audit had been completed for the campus, and if so, what projects were planned for implementation to reduce energy consumption. And we pushed the administration to do more to focus on this most important issue, like hire dedicated staff members and finally complete the audit that Ramboll will speak about today. It is so exciting to see that the work our group started continues with your efforts. Keep pushing, keep working, don't give up. It's only with the dedication of the students, teachers, faculty members, and more that the plan to decarbonize the campus can continue. While I wish I could be with you all today, I look forward to being at next year's event and hearing about the projects that come to fruition between now and then. Have a great day.
Okay. And so next up, I will welcome Mike Paulson, who is here from Public Power for New York City, who will give us kind of an overview of CUNY decarbonization efforts and Public Power New York.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everybody. Great to be here with you. We started collaborating with PSC CUNY and other CUNY campuses last year, where we had, I think, about 10 town halls. And I like the ambition. Now I think it's maybe 14 this year. And super excited to be here. I think of CUNY as just like the beating heart of the city, and especially here. I live uptown myself, and I was just taking care of the community here. So I'll start out with a couple of questions for the first question: who here is happy about the level of their Con Ed bill right now? Okay. Who's ready for their Con Ed bill to go up by, say, 30 or 40% to pay for AI data centers? Who's happy about it's 85 degrees out in October? Okay, you're seeing a pattern here. I'm just trying to nail home the point that our energy system is completely broken, and it is only in the process of getting worse. Utility bills are going to be going further up. We're going to have more blackouts as these tech industries sort of siphon up energy, and we're not able to meet demand. And of course, we are barely scratching the surface of the level of decarbonization we need to have. The reason I put it in terms of asking you all is that there's a really missing piece for our energy system that accounts for all of this, which is the lack of democracy. We really have almost no say in how our energy system works, and in fact, powerful players and the media, they also obfuscate how it all works, such that there's a lot of misinformation. So it's great to be with people because this change here is going to come from regular people, not from on high. So just where we're coming from, we're a coalition of 20 plus orgs around the state that are focused on moving from our disaster of energy system right now into one that is publicly owned, democratically controlled, and 100% renewable. So I'm not going to super deep into all of this. This is actually maybe an old version. Essentially, the majority of our system is owned by private entities. That would include utilities like Con Edison or private generators who are generating electricity. But we do have this unusual tool in New York State on the right there, which is the New York Power Authority, which is the largest publicly owned utility in the U.S. It's at the state level. It actually is able to provide low-cost electricity precisely because it is, owned by the public and for the public, not for making profits. Taking off from that advantage that we have, that this authority that was actually founded by FDR when he was governor of New York, so it really has that legacy and New Deal. Our coalition fought for 4 years to pass the Build Public Renewables Act, which is a major climate law that basically empowers and directs the New York Power Authority to step up and decarbonize our state where the private sector has failed. Four key pieces. It tasks the Power Authority with leading here and saying, yes, we're going to build enough projects to meet our climate goals. This is important because, speaking of the public not getting to know, like almost all of the renewable energy projects that have been planned for New York State over the last, say, 5 to 6 years have been canceled. And the reason for that is they have judged them to not be profitable enough. So taking profit out of the equation is the core of this. Second piece is that the law includes very strong labor protections. I know there's a lot of folks here studying at City College thinking about what kind of job they're going to have, like an increasingly very, very bad job market. The projects that are built by public power, they're going to be green jobs to build those projects and to operate them long term. Third piece, and this is very relevant in uptown Manhattan, we have these peaker plants around the city, which are gas-fired plants that are only used when, on the hottest days, for example, when there's a lot of demand for electricity. This law moves the Power Authority to shut those down more quickly. Because we build up renewable energy, we can take away this heavily polluting fossil fuel infrastructure that creates massive amounts of health problems for people in places like the South Bronx, just across the river here, asthma, very high levels of hospitalization. And the last thing, which is very on people's minds right now, is lowering people's utility. So as I mentioned, if we're building public power, we don't have to take thousands and thousands of millions of dollars to give to shareholders to make a profit. We can take that money and actually put it back into people's pockets by lowering their content bill or wherever they live. So this is a statewide campaign because the governor ultimately has more control than anyone else over our energy system. And not only has she not moved us forward, she has actively stated she does not intend to meet our climate goals on time, as she is required to by law, which, in the moment right now where we're feeling threats to democracy, it does not feel great that the governor feels entitled to say, I will follow the law how I feel like it, not how it was written. At the same time, we're in a moment of excitement. We have folks from NYPIRG doing voter registration. They told me there's a lot of excitement around the mayoral race where, the city does control a lot to do with energy. We wanted to highlight that energy is sort of on the ballot as well as, all the other questions that people are debating. So the mayor could play a big role in all of this. They could work with the New York Power Authority to build up renewable energy at places like City College, the CUNY campuses, but also the many, many public facilities around the city, school buildings, MTA system. These have a huge physical footprint and a huge amount of space that can be used. America could also work on building up renewable energy specifically in the disadvantaged communities that host these polluting peaker plants so we can get them out of there even faster. Definitely, schools in particular, we know is a major interest, and I think that stretches from K through 12 through higher education, because as you all know, like the physical condition of these buildings is like your working conditions, your learning conditions at these schools, and ultimately we imagine schools can be used as sort of resiliency hubs for whole areas, to help during times of crisis, and of course just to have a more comfortable place to learn and teach. What we're doing right now, we passed our law a couple of years ago, but the fight really has to go on because, as I mentioned, the government in New York State right now is not so keen on actually fulfilling the mandates of our climate law and the demands that we have for an affordable and just and renewable energy system. So we're pushing the state to really fulfill this mandate by building 15 gigawatts of public renewables by 2030. That is a sort of mathy term, which I'm not a scientist or an engineer, but I can tell you that it's in the ballpark of enough energy to power about 12 million households. So a massive step. And that number comes from our best calculation working with researchers for how much NYPIRG needs to build to hit our climate goals. So if we are able to do that, we will create roughly 25,000 green union jobs. That will also help to create jobs for people currently working in fossil fuels who will lose their job, and that they can be retrained to work in renewable energy. And in the labor movement, this is referred to as a just transition. We take care of people who are, move power into energy transition. Second piece that we will get is that the more of this we build, the more we will be able to lower utility bills for people for that very reason of taking out the profit motive. And if you've read much about this, the forecasts for this are really dire over the next few years of how much utility bills are expected to go up. But people already can't afford to pay them, right? So we need them to go down, not up. And then again, the demand I mentioned a few times is to get these peaker plants shut as quickly as possible, because this is it's a massive issue of inequality, and it is a massive health crisis. And by the way, doing that will also save people massive amounts of money on healthcare and the entire healthcare system. This is a huge expense. Like any organizer, I want to end with an ask for all of you to actually take action, not just to sort of learn about this. This QR code, if you could scan it, will go to a tool we have to send a letter to the governor. And basically to tell the governor, the system is broken, can't afford the bills, we're dealing with poisoned air, we want to have a livable future. So we need to take the opportunity that we have given by passing this law to bring public power to New York and meet our climate goals and transform our energy system. So I guess I'll give everybody a minute for that, but thank you all so much. I appreciate being able to speak to you.
Thank you, Mike. Has everybody had a moment to scan the QR code? We're all good? Okay, cool. Next up, let me get my right deck here, sorry. Next up, I'd like to welcome Justin Yulo, who is the director of our City College chapter of the New York Public Interest Research Group. Justin.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin. I'm project coordinator of the New York Public Interest Research Group, otherwise known as NYPIRG here at City College, and I'm also the voter empowerment coordinator for all of NYPIRG as well, which is exciting time because there's an election coming up, and we're expecting what we want from the next mayoral administration and city council, public advocate, and whatnot, other local positions and what we want. So a little bit about our work. Our whole nonprofit is run and led by students. Our board of directors is student run and led, elected by the student body and whatnot to represent our chapters. We have chapters all across CUNY, SUNY, and even other private schools like Pratt. And we basically teach students how to be community organizers. We get them civically engaged, they volunteer with us, and we also collaborate a lot with other organizations on campus, like with the PSC. We are more than glad to always collaborate with them from time to time again, not just on climate issues, but also when it comes to higher education. And also, our friends down at Brooklyn College have worked time and time again with TREEage down there as well, and looking forward to that as well. But the work that we do with students is educating them about the issues at hand in several key campaigns that we work on, and also getting them to take action and bringing along that sort of action to their students as well, to inspire others and become student leaders on campus. So here's 7 of our campaign issues that we work on. Hunger and housing is one of them as well. We do community drives. Higher education affordability, especially when it comes to something like the New Deal for CUNY, if you've heard of that bill before. Public transit equity, that's a big one right now, especially with the problems of public transit bases and the lack of infrastructure and whatnot. Voter empowerment, as you can see, we're registering people to vote right here, but also outside at the community and career fair as we speak. We have a person there too. Public health care is another big one with something like the New York Health Act that is in the State Senate and State Assembly. Consumer justice, and also environmental protections, which NYPIRG has been known for since its inception in the 1970s. And it's really huge because we have a lot of legislative victories on our hands since our organization has been around. Some of the most notable ones here that I could not fit every single one because there's some specific to cities and towns and all over the state, but there's very many. For those familiar with the bottle return law back in 1982, that's of course every time you buy a can of soda or a bottle and you can return it at the redemption center or to your store for 5 cents. That has put families through college. I've known stories of people who collect cans and put their kids through school, put funding in their pockets and whatnot, and we're working on a version of that for the state because 5 cents does not go a long way anymore in 2025. Before we've had $1.4 billion in funding for drinking water quality improvement that we're still fighting for today. Statewide ban on fracking in 2015 was another big one that happened. Banning offshore drilling on our beaches and shores for oil as well. Another recent one that I was able to be a helping hand in when I used to be an intern with NYPIRG was the local law 97. That one turns new buildings that are 25,000 square foot and over to run more on electricity rather than gas emissions. And we're currently working on a bill within City Council to make sure that building owners and landlords are complying with this bill as well. And the biggest one that we got a major victory in is the Climate Change Superfund Act. That one was a long time coming to where it's taken about a number of years to pass and get support in state government. And recently we got it passed in 2024, which in a nutshell, the Climate Change Superfund Act entails where gas and oil companies like Shell, ExxonMobil, and BP, their use of oil and gas emissions over the decades has exacerbated the climate disaster. We're seeing climate disasters happen all over the country, all over the world, and the taxpayers really, unfortunately, foot the end of the bill to it. So with this, it builds a super fund from their profits so that we can have funding for all of these different climate bills and projects that we're fighting for, like building public renewables, or the bottle bill, or increasing or improving infrastructure for green energy around New York State. And it's the first of its kind throughout the country, and we're still fighting for it to be fully implemented. And the fight still continues because there are still other bills that we're fighting to pass within the city and within the state, but through the power of collaboration and our amazing student leaders all across the state of New York and our coalition members all across that we work with, we can definitely get them passed. For example, Intro 1180 is one here locally in the city. When I mentioned Local Law 97, there is a curtail introduced by the current mayor where building owners and landowners can buy energy credits in order to not fully comply with Local Law 97 and retrofit their buildings to work on clean energy. However, with Intro 1180, we are fighting to pass it with City Council and trying to get a hearing, but also getting students to talk with their City Council members to urge them to support the bill, so that so that buildings can finally comply with Local Law 97 that we passed along a while ago, and make sure that these buildings are running on clean energy. Because in New York City, skyscrapers are found to be one of the biggest emitters of gas and oil pollution. Especially all the ones we have downtown. We have a lot of air pollution here in the city and whatnot. Another one that kind of goes hand in hand is the bigger, better bottle bill. As I mentioned, the 5-cent return law. This one aims to modernize it so that it costs 10 cents and increases the amount of infrastructure and such to bottle return centers, because there's not a lot of them all throughout New York City. There's one that I know myself called Sugarcane, that's a nonprofit that only exists in Brooklyn, and other ones across the state is also very scarce. So this would also increase the number of different receptacles and bottles that would be able to be recycled, because there are certain certain soft drinks and energy drinks that exist nowadays that don't apply with the current bottle bill that end up in landfills. So this is definitely one that should be supported on. Same thing with the Packaging Reduction Act, reducing packaging waste by companies and whatnot. And also, one familiar is the New York Heat Act. We have been also fighting for the Heat Act to where buildings and homes can be retrofitted to run on cleaner energy and not rely a lot on fossil fuels and oil use. And we are actually fighting to pass a piece of that bill that is currently sitting on the governor's desk to be signed very soon. And for example, there are still, New Heat Act on to the next slide, but there are some projects that, there's some infrastructure gas and oil projects that currently exist that we are currently fighting against. For example, who's heard of the Williamton NESC pipeline before? Yeah. It's, even I had to kind of catch up to learn all about it. It's a gas pipeline that's supposed to come from Philadelphia and go through downstate New York, down there from the Rockaways and into New Jersey. Its proposal has been shot down previously in the past years. However, with the current governor and also collaboration as well with the federal government, what I believe is supposedly being proposed again this May, and we are currently part of a large coalition hoping to get it shut down. Last week, we joined with New York Communities for Change to flyer at Staten Island Ferry, because that is one of the spots where the pipeline would affect the local waters, and also we don't need oil and gas pipelines anymore, especially now that we're facing a climate crisis that's exacerbated by those oil and gas pipelines that exist. Also, it would be very costly, because the ones putting the end of the bill would be us as the taxpayers and not the corporation that owns the pipeline. So it got proposed again this May, and there are a number of statewide actions to urge the governor to shut down the proposal of the pipeline. It's been done previously with the previous governor of New York, and it can definitely be done again. However, definitely staying vigilant to prevent more fossil fuel usage in New York City, especially at a time where we're facing a lot of climate disasters and unusual weather as well, like New York City becoming a subtropical climate now, as you probably heard in the news over the summer, but also 80 again, as mentioned before, 80 degrees in October, which is insane to think about. Luckily not today, but in the past weeks we've seen it as well. So I want us to take some action here and call the governor to leave a message about the Williamton NESC pipeline. We've been generating thousands of calls in the past couple of weeks throughout our different chapters and other actions with students, and we will not stop until the governor formally shuts down the pipeline. I'll definitely take a minute to call myself. You can also skip the automated message with the governor's number saying, hello, this is the governor's office. Press 1 to skip so you can leave a message to her office that we don't need new fossil fuel infrastructure in our cities and towns. And another one that we're trying to pass through the state that can definitely get city support is a piece of the New York Heat Act that I mentioned before. We did not get a full Heat Act in the recent legislative session, but we got a piece of it, which is also good progress. The 100-foot rule. So, has anyone heard of the 100-foot rule obligation? Yes. So, in a nutshell, to the best of I explained it as well, any new buildings built within approximation of a pipeline. So let's say, like, for example, some of the other existing pipelines here, including the Williams NESC, there's an obligation to serve gas and oil when connected to that pipeline automatically, with little to no option to move over to green energy if it's within 100 feet of that pipeline. And the cost of it is put onto the homeowner and user and not the gas and oil company providing the service, as you would probably think. The provider anyways is right there within 100 feet, why not? But also know it goes to the taxpayer. And this costs gas users and such over $200 million per year, and also the overall thing of still being on gas and oil, which we're trying to phase out. So we're constantly, different actions are happening around the state in other NYPIRG chapters and our collaborator organization as well. We're also urging the governor to sign the bill, because the great thing is that we got the bill passed in the state senate and the state assembly, and now it's time for the governor to finally sign it since it's on your desk, hopefully before the end of the year. Otherwise, as everyone knows with climate laws and such, you have to do the same song and dance with the senate and assembly and such. And one of the actions that's being taken right now on some of our other campuses is they are also calling the governor about this, meeting with elected officials in key areas around Queens, Staten Island, and other places that we have a NYPIRG chapter in, and getting to urge the government to support it. Another action that we have statewide is these fun little postcards that we made that we're sending to the governor as well, that we have copies of at our table outside of 30 and Pizza. Little postcards urging the governor to, sign the 100-foot rule, and finally, get us 100 feet closer to ending fossil fuel use in New York State. But that's mainly on that. A lot of this is very state. A lot of this is very states focused, but definitely when it comes to the mayor of New York, the next administration, and the next city council and whatnot, they can absolutely support these bills. Like as mentioned before, decarbonizing our campuses and working with the Power Authority to build more public renewables. Those 15 gigawatts, those are crucial to making our campus run more sustainably, shutting down those peaker power plants, because I live near one, unfortunately, in Astoria, the one by the bridge that's affecting the community around it. The fact that it's still open is insane. I used to think it was abandoned, but apparently not. But there are many things that, even if a lot of these efforts are focused on statewide issues, our next city leaders can definitely support these issues and move us closer to a fossil-free future. And that's about it.
Thank you, Justin, also for coordinating the quietest phone calls I've ever heard. Just barely heard. Okay, next up, I'm thrilled to welcome Helen Brady, who is our City College Chapter President of TREEage.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. My name is Helen Brady. I'm a sophomore here at City College and I'm a poli-sci student, so it's really nice to meet everyone here and get involved on campus. To start it off, TREEage has been around here now at City College for about 2 months, so it's really but we've been in CUNYs now for about 2 years. And what we do is we work with students at local public high schools and colleges on climate action in a political form. So we don't actually go out and plant trees. We don't do that, even though our name is TREEage for like our upcoming election, especially surrounding the mayoral election. So it was really, really great and an energy that we've never had before. So for 2025 and 2026, our ongoing campaigns really center around Green Healthy Schools and Solar for Schools Act specifically, which directly affects the students that we work with in public high schools. So that is a legislation that is pushing to make our school buildings much healthier, especially for a lot of our schools in Brooklyn, Queens, and personally the school that I went to in Staten Island, our school buildings are very old. And sometimes lack the infrastructure, lack the funding in some ways, or lack the administrative help to get certain things fixed. So the great thing is that now we really want the state to get involved in actually holding sometimes our administration or our local officials in doing this. So Green Healthy Schools, Decarbonize CCNY, of course, and fun climate campaigns, local climate campaigns and champions in city council and state and local 197. So So, of course, I think a lot of people here know about the importance of voting, but that is something that TREEage is really focusing on, hyper-focusing on, especially with the mayoral election going on. And specifically stuff surrounding the New York City budget. Does anybody know how much the New York City budget is? Okay, I feel like we know. But does anyone else, but what did you say? Does anybody else have any ideas, like any guesses? Like how much do you think it could be or is? $1 billion? Yeah. Okay. Anyone? No guesses?
10 billion.
10 billion? Okay. Warmer. Way warmer. Okay. It's actually 116 billion. Yeah. So we have a lot of money. It's not that we don't have the money. We have huge, like if you look on the wheel there, it's a lot of money. These are in comparison to other states. So these are states right here that have less of a budget than New York City, just the city. Wait, sorry, yeah, New York City, just the city. So clearly we have a lot of money and it could be going a lot of places and it could be making a lot of changes, but I don't think everyone's feeling those changes. So what's on the November ballot? Mayor, comptroller, public advocate, borough president, and city council. There's a lot of stuff going on this year and the budget is really where we should be focusing on. Because $116 billion is now kind of in the hands of New Yorkers again. Registering to vote is a big part of that. Obviously, NYPIRG outside, TREEage, but also on CUNY first. You can see voter registration forms. That's us. Actually, that's me. That's me in my senior year of high school. That's not senior. When was that? It was junior?
Yeah.
Oh. Are you a voter too?
I'm right about
Oh, look at that. You can scan this right here to join us and to participate us on campus. We're very, very new and we haven't even had one club meeting yet, so we're just, checking it out there. And this is just to stay connected with me as I'm going to be running this and getting this off the ground this year. This is our poster right here. You can, if you scan that before it. Yeah, that's it. And our first event is actually happening. We're having a CUNY Halloween mixer at our office. And it's going to be on Friday, October 24th. And it's completely free. And there's going to be tons of students from all 7 campuses. And it's going to be really, really fun. And there's going to be a lot of different activities. Like we're going to have pumpkin painting, face painting, costume contests, food, mocktails. It's really nice. It's going to be downtown. So you can just scan that right there to RSVP. Stay connected with us either on WhatsApp or Instagram, but whichever one. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Helen. We're excited to have TREEage on the City College campus. And now we've been talking about sort of climate justice statewide, public power, and at the city level with our mayoral race. So now we will fine-tune our scale even more to talk about what's happening here on the City College campus. We should have combined into one PDF, sorry everybody. Okay. It is my pleasure to introduce our Campus Sustainability Coordinator, Jake Weinberger.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you guys all hear me? Yeah, good. All right. So, in the beginning of this whole thing, Yael mentioned in the video that we needed to find funding for a person to get involved with sustainability and energy, climate goals with the campus. So thankfully, I'm here. And so I was brought on in January for the campus sustainability efforts. I just want to skip over. So Sustainable CCNY is the name of this campus-wide program. Sustainability initiatives, projects, energy initiatives, all fall under my purview. And so this sustainability program operates under the Environmental, Health, and Occupational Safety Department under facilities. It's an all-encompassing program for the initiatives. I'm going to talk briefly about what's going on campus and what I'm involved with. Ramboll, our consultant, is here to talk more about our decarbonization strategy. But first, we have a sustainability council. So the goal of it is to have a representative from every department on campus involved in these meetings to help me advise the campus on these initiatives. So one of the initiatives is waste management. Back in May, my department, we did a waste audit of the Marshak Science Building. It was a small audit, but we go and collect waste, trash, recycling bags, and we sort through it. We collected about 80 pounds of waste, and we had high capture rates for recyclables like paper, metal, and glass. So what was in those bins was actually what was in those bins. So it was a high percentage. These are the results up close. And 2 days ago, we just completed a larger waste audit of the NAC building. So I know some of you were there, so thank you so much for attending. We collected and sorted through hundreds of pounds of waste. I'm still going through the data, but it is promising. You might have seen if you strolled by the NAC building 2 days ago, a huge effort. So again, what we're trying to do with the data, standardize our waste bins. We have different types of bins, different sizes, different shapes. So we want to standardize, make them all look the same on campus so it's clear. Right now the situation with our recycling efforts, cardboard, trash, bulk items are sent to separate containers outside of this building, Marshak, and it's a little bit behind Spitzer. Our metal, glass, plastic, and carton container is located in the South Campus parking lot. Not an ideal location because a lot of bulk items are just being thrown there. So we're trying to move that to a better location. Furthermore, we should be transitioning to from easy packs that we have right now to NYPIRG bins. So if you go down that street of Convent, there are the tubs, the gray tubs by the high schools. That's what we're going to transition to. It's rodent proof and a lot more secure. And it will have the option for composting as well. For composting, we have vermicomposting, which is composting with worms in one of the labs in Marshak. One of our former students, Jason Oakes, manages that. We also have an urban gardens program, which I'll talk about at the last slide. But we're going to set up, I'm working on a compost station there. This is an energy campaign. So it's combining art with energy. This is an art contest that went on in September. And so we had several designs that were entered from students, graduates, and undergraduates. And this is basically the design that it will win. The winning design will go on a sticker that will go above the light switch right here. And it will remind people when they leave the room to turn off the light switch. So if you go along the parking lot near the NAC building, you'll see the solar carport with a bunch of cars parked under it. It's a solar carport, and it's going to power 10 dual EV chargers. Those EV chargers will be coming online in the next several months. And then, because this college is very old, we have a lot of antiquated water fountains. So I went through all the buildings, I took inventory of all the water fountains, and the goal is we purchased a bunch of bottle filling stations. We're going to install and replace new ones this fall and into next year. Also, back in May, Catherine and I had the pleasure of speaking with the president on his podcast, From City to the World. It's available on Apple Podcasts. So we spoke about all the great sustainability initiatives in the master's program on campus. And lastly, I just wanted to point out that the Urban Gardens program, which is located on the north side of the Spitzer building, it was dormant for a very long time, but we now restarted it last Friday. We got a bunch of volunteers to join in, and so we went from this with a bunch of weeds to de-weeding it with a bunch of volunteers, and now we've planted lettuce, arugula, all different vegetables. The goal with that, the president's office, Benny's Food Pantry, they help manage this. So the goal, they bring in food from Cisco and they give it out to the community for free. So the goal with this is to grow our own food and then harvest it and provide that to the community. And with the food waste, put it into compost so it's a closed loop system. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Jake. And so now that we've talked about what we are doing on campus, we can talk about what we would like to do. So it's my pleasure to welcome Chase Totoris, is that right? From Ramboll, our energy officers.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chase. I'm joined by my colleague Renee over here. This is pretty timely for us. Thanks for inviting us, by the way. It's really great. It's pretty timely for us. We just submitted a report this morning for City College to NYPIRG, and I'll be seeing that shortly. So, it's all sort of fresh in my mind. There's a lot of data in here. I know I only have a few minutes, but if it seems like I'm rushing through data, it's because I am. I'm sure there's time for questions, or I'll be here after to discuss. So we're going to talk about the intent of the program, just give a little overview about the current energy use and emissions of the campus, what we did in our study in terms of our decarbonization plan, and the key takeaways from that. So I'm happy to see that the CLCPA and Local Law 97 were mentioned a few times here, but these are really the big drivers and mandates for why we were tasked by NYPA to assess the energy portfolio of the college. You have the CLCPA, which is pretty aggressive greenhouse gas emissions reductions. You also have Executive Order 22, under which Bill Smart 2025 is a part of. It's really driving state agencies to reduce their energy consumption by certain levels. It also requires any energy by state agencies to be sourced by renewable sources. So that's a pretty big one. It's a pretty big assumption for our analysis, because we assume that by 2030 that any electricity that the campus uses is green and is fully decarbonized. That's really just from a pure numbers perspective and life cycle perspective. When you look at techno-economic performance of different energy systems, it's a really important discussion. So, then you have Local Law 97, which is mentioned a few times today, which is great. While the buildings here aren't necessarily owned by the city and aren't necessarily subject to the requirements of Local Law 97, there is sort of a voluntary kind of obligation as a member of the city to meet those targets, and if you meet the targets listed above, you'll meet the Local Law 97 targets for covered buildings greater than 25,000 square feet. So, but it is important to know. In terms of what we did, so we started off right before I think you joined, Jake, with our sort of desktop analysis. So just analyzing the campus's utility bills, really just seeing all the energy in and energy out, accompanied by building walkthroughs and building audits and assessments that really just try to quantify all of the energy end uses of the campus. So, where it's going in, where it's going out. And from that, we're able to screen some electrification technologies. So really just assessing what sort of technologies would fit the campus's energy portfolio. We made a group of electrification scenarios based off of that assessment, and really assessed those scenarios side by side to see what from both an energy efficiency standpoint and from a cost perspective would make the most sense for the campus. So a little bit about the campus. So obviously there are a good amount of buildings for a CUNY campus. We do these assessments for a couple other CUNY campuses, and City College is the biggest one that I've really put my hand in. So there are 16 total conditioned buildings on campus, but there are over 30 structures spanning over 35 acres up here. The primary heating source for most of these buildings are large natural gas steam boilers located in the central plant in the NAC building. And for cooling, there's a combination of both steam chillers and electric chillers. So really our focus, from a district perspective, is how do we electrify that natural gas steam boiler system and what that looks like for the campus. That's our really our biggest focus in this study. So in terms of existing energy use, you can see that there's a pretty even mixture just by a per unit basis of the campus of both electricity and natural gas, with a small amount of fuel oil that the boilers use during really cold days when condensate asks them to. But in terms of cost, much like Public Power New York was mentioning, bills, electric bills are pretty high, right? So you can see the cost breakdown of the electricity is much higher than natural gas, because natural gas is cheap. That's a whole rabbit hole we can go into later. But then in terms of emissions, we actually see that the electric emissions kind of outweighs the natural gas emissions, which is surprising. It's because the campus already uses a pretty significant amount of electricity. But again, like I mentioned earlier, if you assume that electricity is renewably sourced, those emissions over time are likely to sway heavily into the fossil fuel, the natural gas bucket, right? So how do we get rid of natural gas? Just from our calculations, and from the utility bills, we assume that the campus is using around 45,000, or emitting 45,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent each year, which is the equivalent of these, other end users, right? So typical households, 5,500. In New York State specifically, equivalent of 9,700 cars on the road in a given year. It's also the equivalent of 375 round trips from LA. Some nice fun facts for you. Okay, so now what should the campus do? So I've did some research on these Decarbonize CCNY town halls in the past, and I saw a few presentations just about ways that are energy efficiency measures that a lot of students have identified for the campus, which is great. In our walkthroughs, we were tasked with assessing a few measures as well that would ultimately reduce the campus's energy use. From our assessment, we were tasked with coming up with around 5. We came up with these as what we like to consider the most low-hanging fruit, right? The ones that would pay back for themselves in a relatively short timeline, would save the most energy and the costs the least. So those measures are LED lighting and controls. So sustainability stickers are nice above light switches, but why not have a system that will turn itself off? In terms of HVAC, we assessed that retro-commissioning, reset control schemes on both air handling and pumping systems, and then conversion of single or constant volume air systems to variable volume air systems would yield some great benefits for the campus. So that was just a sprinkle of energy savings that we assessed for the campus in our study. This slide is really just a visualization of a concept that our group likes to use when we assess a big district energy system like City College. And we like to refer to it as the baseload peaking strategy. So basically what this is trying to show is that when we assess, a large natural gas boiler on a campus, and we are assessing what should replace that equipment, we like to think that we should try to size new equipment to meet a majority of the annual loads. That means that instead of sizing for a system that could meet, this much on like a peak design heating day, we'll size one to meet this much, and then over 90% of the year, that baseload technology will be operating, providing heating for the campus, meeting all the condition load, and then on those, seldom week or two where it's extra cold, using either a natural gas boiler or an electric boiler to provide the rest of that. So this is an important consideration from a capital perspective because it significantly reduces your upfront costs of your systems, right? In addition to providing some additional redundancy for your fuel source if you end up using a natural gas peaking boiler, and also just more redundancy in general. So what we did is we assessed a myriad of different electrification technologies in terms of their ability to meet the long-term greenhouse gas emission goals of the campus, in terms of how much they cost, both upfront and also over time with their operating expenses, and how well and easy it is to integrate into the existing infrastructure of the campus. So we looked at different electrification technologies, different fossil fuel technologies as well, on-site renewables, and also energy storage, of which we included tank thermal energy storage assessments and also some geothermal assessments that I'll get into. So in terms of potential heat sources of the campus, we explored lots. We performed assessments of any low-grade waste heat we could find. We looked at rivers, we looked at the Hudson, we looked at subway, any subway waste heat that we could recover nearby. Ultimately, came pretty short in terms of the feasibility or capability of those sources. Ultimately, we focus our efforts on these three. So ambient air, just the use of the atmosphere basically as a heat source or heat sink for heating and cooling, with the use of air source heat pumps, which utilizes basic refrigeration cycles, much like a typical air conditioner does. The benefits of that is that it's unlimited unless we run out of air, which would be crazy, and then it's also relatively inexpensive. We also looked at geothermal. So we performed some assessments of the campus in conjunction with a geothermal subcontractor and also the New York City DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. Ultimately, what we found is that there is a significant amount of underground water infrastructure that the DEP owns near the campus that would require pretty significant coordination and care while drilling to utilize. And so we really just came up with this kind of small corridor of available drilling space. And ultimately we decided that wasn't enough to meet enough of the campus's baseload heating or cooling. So ultimately we deemed that a low feasibility technology for the campus. And then lastly, we looked at heat recovery chillers, which are basically chillers that provide simultaneous heating and cooling very efficiently, but does require some simultaneity in its heating and cooling loads, of which we also assessed as pretty low for the campus. Cool. Our comments are great. Ultimately, we weighed each technology against each other, and we came up with the following scenarios. So the gist of this is that we came up with 8 scenarios that we assessed and modeled in terms of its efficiency and cost. So we assessed 4 scenarios, the 1.1s and 1.2s that use air source heat pumps as a baseload technology. And then the scenario 2s as ones that use electric boilers as their baseload technology, which are obviously much less efficient. And then for both scenarios, they utilize electric chillers to provide the campus's cooling needs. And then in terms of the peaking technology, we use a mixture of natural gas and electric boilers to provide that extra amount of heating lift on those coldest days. And then in terms of energy storage, we looked at the impact of utilizing tank thermal energy storage just to smooth out some of those heating and cooling leaks on your design phase. That's really for the centralized buildings. I haven't actually mentioned the fact that there are some large decentralized loads on campus. So the ASRC, CDI, Marshak Science, and then also some of the NAC building have pretty, decentralized loads off of the central plan that are significant and we need to consider. So we included a plan for those as well, and that are lumped in really to each scenario, each electrification scenario. What we found. There's a lot going on this graph, but basically you have your business as usual on the right. Business as usual is a case where you assume that no upgrades happen on the campus, everything as is. The campus maintains its natural gas boilers, its steam chillers, and everything. And so these are just really the replacement costs we expect over a certain timeline. And on the left, you have your air source heat pump scenarios. You can see that the capital of those are quite high. The upfront costs of those scenarios are quite high. That's because, namely, you have to change out the distribution infrastructure of the campus. You have to change out all of the piping and the trench new piping that is able to accommodate lower temperature hot water. Because ultimately what we are trying to do in these scenarios is get the campus off of the steam distribution network and onto the lower temperature distribution network that the air source heat pump plant can meet the load. And you can see these middle ones here are the electric boiler scenarios. The reason why they cost less up front is because, again, they don't have to change out all the piping. That's the practice. This is a quick, kind of a lot to look at as well. Basically, this is saying that in any scenario, we are likely to incur some, or it is necessary that we are going to need some new electrical infrastructure and coordination with Con Edison to ensure that the grid capacity in the surrounding area is able to accommodate a significant increase in the electrical load. And what is actually important about this is the fact that because we're electrifying or proposing to electrify the heating systems, we're shifting the campus away from a summertime peak electrical demand entity to a wintertime one. So that's an important consideration. Okay, so all this to almost a year's worth of work into one graph here, but really what this is showing is the total life cycle cost performance of each of these electrification scenarios side by side. So this time we have the business as usual on the left, and then we have electrification scenarios over there. So what this is doing is it's over a 50-year period, so over a period we expect most of the equipment to last that we're proposing. How much would it cost the campus? So light green is utility costs. It's just upfront cost of electricity or cost of natural gas. We see that it is the least in the business as usual case, which makes the most sense. Natural gas is cheap. In the air source heat pump case, even for between natural gas peaking and electric peaking, we see not a big difference, but we see a slightly higher utility cost just because electricity is more expensive, but also we see it less than the electric boiler scenarios because the air source heat pumps are that much more efficient. Then where the business as usual case, so the existing conditions where it starts to lose out in terms of performance, is when you start to consider the CO2 emissions costs. So what we do is we assume that the campus, or really what we're doing is we're assessing the social cost of carbon. So what that is any costs, it's not direct penalty costs, it's not direct emissions penalties that the campus would incur. It's more an idea of the monetary impact of emitting carbon in the future. And it's a typical practice amongst policymakers and energy planners to account for something like that. So when you do account for it, we see that the cost competitiveness of the electrification scenarios begin to outweigh the existing emissions, which is great. It's good. A small analysis of expected timelines we have for each step of electrifying the campus. So these are actually emissions that we project for the campus. So we're starting up here at around 45,000 metric tons in fiscal year 23-24, which is the utility bills that we analyzed, and then we sort of jump to 2030. 2030 is when we expect the grid to be electrified, or rather the electricity that the campus sources to be fully decarbonized. In addition to all of the energy efficiency measures that we recommend, then we see another phase where we recommend the electrification of all of the decentralized loads. Then we expect a pretty long timeline for construction and procurement for the rest of the campus in terms of piping and all the upgrades necessary to the central plant. And then lastly, the removal of the final removal of the natural gas steam boilers or natural gas boilers with electrified alternatives. So we don't fully get rid of fossil fuels until this time, but you can see we actually are projecting that they're able to meet the reductions goals of all of the mandates I talked about earlier, even without full removal of fossil fuels, which is great. And it's really important to understand that from a planning perspective, just because it could be quite costly and intrusive to the campus to do it sort of all at once, right? So, sorry, my boss's comments are in here. So the key takeaways is that the dense campus area reduces the electrification technology potential, but does not fully remove it. It is, while sources like geothermal, like wastewater, are less feasible for City College, full electrification is not impossible, and we've discovered that. Additionally, over 96% of the emissions from fossil fuels are achievable without 100% electrifying. So, like I mentioned, removal of your baseload fossil fuel usage is the most important. Where it's less important is that peaking. Additionally, all of the electrification scenarios we've analyzed require some form of electrical upgrades. So, continued coordination with NYPA, who sells the power, and Con Ed, who provides the power, is quite important. And then, lastly, the buildings themselves do require pretty significant investment to accept the lower distribution temperature for heating, and is really, on a building level, those upgrades are crucial to be able to fully electrify.
Thank you so much to all of our speakers. I'd like to invite you all now to come up to the front for some questions. And I realize we're down a chair. Do we have questions from the audience?
Yeah, I guess I think this was a question that was probably begged by everybody, but I think both TREEage and NYPIRG spoke explicitly to it, because all of the goals we're talking about depend on the budget, and that's both the city and the state budget to make those goals achievable, or actually achieve those goals. So I would like them to comment on the budget process for both, for the part that they want to of the city and the state, for achieving the goals we just discussed.
I mean, I could talk. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the campus goals, we're working on this budget right now. We have a master's plan as well, and so I think all of these initiatives are being accountable for taking into account for that. In terms of the larger budget, I can't speak directly for that, but we will provide more answers to that, and I really think that we're hitting the ground running on that. So,
I mean, I'll just say that the question of who pays is at the center of the whole climate for example, building more natural gas infrastructure is being borne by everyone in this room equally out of our utility bills. That's not something we voted for. That's not something that people are running for office to say, we're going to do that. So I think the whole question is, well, there are going to be costs. We also heard about the sort of budgeting for the economic and social costs of continued emissions. Those are astronomical if we don't decarbonize. So that's another cost that we're going to. So I think the question is, how do we clarify to people? Yes, it's a lot of money, but some people have a lot of money, and in fact, they could be paying quite a bit more their share to pay for this.
Definitely talking on that. As I mentioned, with the Climate Change Superfund Act that was passed in 2024, the fund from the profits of these big mega corporations of Shell, Exxon, Mobil, BP, it would be taking a fraction of their profits that they absolutely fund these projects that we're talking about. And as you mentioned, it's they're corporations, and so they can definitely pay their fair share, and how it's allocated, because no longer can our high utility bills really pay for these things. Like, it should be footed by the ones profiting off of it.
So it's kind of a particular question, which is, you were talking about needing significant infrastructure changes to the buildings in order to bring down the heat, the temperature of heating. Is that, and this, I think we'll go to you, is that a DASME project? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Does it have to go through DASME, or is, and that changes your timeline?
Yeah, I think Richard might be the best person to answer that one. He's the director of environmental health and occupational safety.
How are you?
Easy. Or buildings are owned by the dormitory authority of the state of New York, and they are, for the most part, responsible for all the capital management, capital funding, all of that money. That kind of cost is really huge, so that will go into the capital operation. On the plus side, through the governor's initiative on decarbonization, we got $40 million, which is the most of any CUNY school to do improvements, and some of those projects will be starting out really soon. One project that I was hoping to get into that, but we weren't able to, was to change in the glass curtain on that building, because that's pretty old and pretty leaky. It is estimated that had we were able to change that, we would have been able to cut the energy bill down by quite a bit.
And our carbon emissions.
And reduce our carbon emissions because less heating.
So the answer is yes.
Yes,
DASME,
it
because
does.
they own money, because they own the buildings.
Yes.
Right. But the 40 million that we got, right?
Yeah.
Your projects you proposed, like, what's the difference in the cost?
What's the difference in the cost between the
Between
envelope
But
project?
if you're a $300 million project and he's got 40 million,
So the types of infrastructure improvements that our project would require are basically surrounding how hot water or steam is being received, right? So anything in really involving, kind of the envelope of the building or
right? No, I'm asking cost.
Oh,
Like, what's your projected cost versus how much do we actually have?
it is likely higher. I mean,
Like
you see,
300
so
million?
over no,
Not that.
Over a 50-year period, that is what we show.
I know.
But just from an upfront cost perspective, we in our report we break it down by each
Phase.
level, and then from that level we also show what recommended phase we are proposing at. So to answer your question too, any form of study or analysis really needs to be broken down into digestible chunks. that show really what what's necessary. And our study, for other campuses too, are really informing sort of phased approaches toward building improvements that in the future would be able to integrate with larger capital investments in like the central network of campus. Right? So.
And, oh, can you come to my class to present on TREEage?
Of course.
Any other questions? Thank you so much to our speakers for being here and CUNY for getting us pizza. And we have a follow-up Mentimeter poll. And yeah, if there's, I think there's money for pizza, so take one with you. And if our speakers have a moment to speak with Jason, that would be great. He's putting together a little video on the event. Thank you so much, everybody.